All right, so you guys have this 15 by 15 mat board that you have divided up into 3 columns and 5 rows. And on the front, you have your term, your definition, and then you have this little drawn picture that you did for each one of the terms. So there's 15 terms on here. You were told to kind of shuffle the terms so that these aren't in any sort of like particular order. If you didn't shuffle them, no big deal. Now we're going to be talking about the back side. So I want you guys to think about this. If this is term 1, term 2, term 3, when we flip this over, term 1, term 2, term 3. So just don't forget to reverse your terms. Does that make sense? Because you're going to be working on the back side. One's going to be, I can utilize this, right? So 1, 2, 3. When you flip this over and I hold 1, it's going to be 3, 2, 1. Okay. So what I would suggest is quite simply taking a photo of the front side of your board, because what you're ultimately going to do is pretty much tape this thing down to your drafting board. What I would do is I would either on a piece of paper list out all the terms, or even better yet, just grab your phone, take a picture. So, and just remember that you got to remember that it's flipped, right? You just got to remember that, because every single year I get like 3 students that forget to flip it, and they do on the back side, they do term 1, right? They do term 2 or column, and then they do this where it should really be completely reversed. So don't forget that. Pro tip number 1. Correct. If you were to cut these things up into little pieces, think about if you were to cut those 15 into separate little cards. You want the back of that to be the next step, if that makes sense. I hope. Does that make sense? I think I said that right. All right. We're not going to cut it apart. That's why you have to, you have to remember to flip it. So in any case, you're basically going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. I'm not going to keep going, but you guys get the point, right? So the front is 1, 2, 3. Okay. So on the back side, we're just flipping it. So somebody give me a term for this one right here. I don't care what term. One of your 15 terms. Somebody give me their number 1 term. Rhythm. All right, perfect. So now, how do we want to define rhythm? Okay, and so what we're going to be doing is that you can only use horizontal and vertical lines. Okay, so these are the rules. If you want to write down the rules, please jot these rules down. Okay, only straight and horizontal, no diagonals. Okay, so we've got rhythm. The other rules. Must start and end on an edge. Okay, so your lines must start and end on an edge, and I'll explain that in just a second. You can do different thicknesses, so we're going to call that weights. Okay, so you can do really, really bold lines. Okay. You can use different colors. You are not required to, but you can. So if you have colored pencils, great. So rules, only straights. So I can only do lines that go up and down. So I can come across here and I can go like this. I used black. I should have used a different color just to make it easier. Let me just redo that. Okay, perfect. Whatever. I'm not worried about it too much, but giving you the examples, right? So, rule one, did I meet it? I only used verticals. I only used horizontals. Must start and end on an edge. I started on this edge. I ended on this edge. So my lines go completely through. What I cannot do, let me do it down here. What I can't do is I can't do this. Okay? I've got to end on an edge. Now, there's a little rule to this. I did say two things here, right? So we have two rules so far. We've got to use horizontal, we've got to use vertical, and it's got to start and end on an edge. So I have a question for you. Would I be allowed to do that? Anybody want to take a stab at that? And remember, I can't read the chat. Can I do this? Am I permitted to do this? Let's read my rules real quick. Only horizontal and verticals. So I've got a vertical, got a horizontal, got a vertical. So I qualified rule one. And I started on an edge, and I started on an edge, and I ended on an edge. Would you guys think this would be acceptable? Yay, nay, someone? Thoughts? You talking about this? So we're gonna call this one continuous line. So it's not, we're not worried about the line segments. We're worried about this being one continuous line. So I am going to say that you are permitted to do this, because we can say that this is one line. It's the blue line, right? We'll just call it the blue line. You are permitted to do this. So you can come up, you can come over. Okay. Again, I'm only using vertical. I'm only using horizontal. So that qualifies rule one. And it started on an edge and it ended on an edge. What I am not permitted to do, easy enough, that broke rule number one, right? I have a diagonal line. This one here is a no-no. Okay. Sorry, Elijah, welcome. So we're just getting started here. So what we're doing is we're defining the rules of the back of the card stock. All right, so another thing that you can do is, again, you can use different line weights, you can use different colors. And I'm going to say that I'm actually going to encourage that you use different line weights, and I'm going to encourage that you use different colors. So hopefully you have color pencils. If not, and you have to do this all with a regular number 2 pencil, that's also completely fine. But what we're actually doing is, on the back of this, we're going to be defining all of our terms again. So if this were rhythm, I'm basically just doing something with the lines that's going to represent the term rhythm. Now, does that represent the term rhythm? I don't know, right? If it does, I can make up some sort of justification for it, but I'm just giving you guys an example. What I want you to do is, just like with the other ones where you kind of wrote down a really quick little blurb about how you were able to justify it, I also want you to do that for the back of this card, okay? So what I would say is have a separate sheet of paper, and on this separate sheet of paper, regular notebook paper, can be lined notebook paper. Doesn't really matter. All right. So what you're going to do is simply draw the grid. You can draw a little thumbnail of it. It doesn't really make that big of a difference. And what I want you to do is, in your little thumbnail, write your terms: rhythm, hierarchy, dominance, right? Make yourself a key so that you can remember it. And all you're going to do is somewhere, and guys, don't spend a lot of time doing this, please. I really just want bullet points if you can, right? So like this here, I could simply just say, like, it doesn't matter. Lines are spaced equally to create rhythm, right? So that could be my complete written justification. It's a very simple, like, literally try to, honestly, guys, it doesn't even have to be a sentence, right? It can be like line spaced equally. That's it. I'm good with that. You're just writing a very, very simple justification as to how I define rhythm. Let's say that this one was dominance. What I could do is right? I could do that. So the left-hand box is obviously much bigger than the other ones. The left-hand box is dominating the others, right? So you could just simply say, as far as your justification is concerned, your really quick little blurb, largest box dominates, period. That's it. Move on to the next one, whatever this one's going to be. All right. So far, does anybody have any questions on this so far? You can do it in notes. You can do it on Google Docs. You can do it. Guys, normally, like, I don't like setting up a whole lot of rules. How's that? Like, we're art people, right? Like, if you like to use a calculator, use a calculator. If you don't like using a calculator, don't use a calculator. It doesn't really make that big of a difference. The idea here is that you guys, the expectation is that you just get the back of this done. Just be able to write me a really quick little blurb about how you defined it. But more importantly, I just need to be able to key it, right? So what I can do is I can look at the front and I can go, oh, she had rhythm. Rhythm was here. When I flip this over, rhythm's going to be here, right? So I know that this one's rhythm. I can look at the back of that. As long as I can look at a written list and find the word rhythm and see, oh, I spaced the lines equally to justify rhythm. I look at the front of this and I say that this is dominance. I look at the back of this, I know that the center is still dominance. I look at this and somebody had 3 little boxes, right? On your justification, you guys have something written down that says dominance. And then you simply have larger box dominates others, or larger box dominates. That could be all you say. All right, so you guys want to know the bonus points of this one? Because I never give bonus points, but I do on this project. You guys want to know what I do for this one? You guys might like it. Some of you are going to have a headache, because this is like the most challenging part of the entire project, is to kind of accommodate the bonus point part of this. Let me erase these. You got it, Nick. So, if you can somehow define all 15 of your terms and all of the lines are interconnected, okay? So what I mean by that is, on this one here, I had these 3 lines coming through. So let me erase this one too. So let's say that this one was defined as rhythm. And I did that by saying that all the lines are equally spaced, right? If I can take these, because these end on this line right here. Now, what I do permit, I do want to make sure that I'm clear on this. I do permit that you can change color and you can change line thicknesses as you continue your lines through. What you can't do, you'll see here. So what if I did this, right? I need to continue these lines. So I'm going to come across here and go 1, 2, 3. So my 3 horizontal lines continued through to this one. And those I created dominance by saying the larger box dominates the other 2, right? So I still was able to define dominance by continuing the lines. That also means that I could add something in here, right? I could have, it doesn't matter. I could have this, right? I could have added that. But when I get to this one, I've got to continue. I don't know what term this is, but let's just say I continued this one straight down like that. So I'm continuing all of these lines to go down into the next definition, and this has got to define another term. And then these lines, I'm trying to switch up colors to make it easy to see on the board. These lines see, if I did that, I'd have to continue this one somehow. Whatever it might be. Okay? Does that make sense? Where I'm like actually continue. I've got no dead edges. I've got no lines that die on the edge that don't continue through until you get to the perimeter. Does that make sense? And it makes it really complex, I do admit, because like to define this term, everything's going to be predetermined for me depending on how you do it, right? Because if these and then these lines went and then these lines went like this, and I had stuff going on down here, I've got to figure out how to right? Then that might have to go like this. Does that make sense? I know that gets really, really kind of confusing, but this center box could be like a really big problem if you don't kind of plan it out. And again, guys, like your justifications are your terms. So however you justify it is the most important part. All right, so let me show you. I think I still have an example real quick. Any questions on that while I'm you could do, if you have 12 different color pencils or 46 different color pencils and you put 46 lines in one box and you were saying somehow the variety of colors equaled, or if you wanted to use the colors as visual weight, honestly guys, this is all about your justification. This has very little to do about the actual drawing again, right? Because the drawings are going to be all open for interpretation. Like I'm looking at that one, I'm literally looking at it on my screen, but that red one, the middle one on the top, number 2, I justified that as dominance by saying that the bigger one dominates the other 2. But really, in my opinion, I actually look at that as more as hierarchy, because I have like a progressively growing size of boxes. Does that make sense? So I actually see that more as hierarchy than I do dominance. But if I justify it as the larger boxes dominating the other elements, then that's fine. This is just another reinforcement that you guys understand all of the terminology, and you get that through your definitions. And no rules on colors. You can use as many colors, as little colors as you want. You can use different line weights. So literally having like really, really thin lines that actually almost don't even show up. And then having really, really super bold lines that do. You can do that. I am looking for an image real quick so that I can share these with you. Just bear with me for one moment while I look for these. Let's log into my actual account. Okay, so here we go. Let me show my screen real quick. Okay, so this here is a previous example of this project. And so what we have going on here is the same thing you guys did, is the front side, you have the definitions. This young lady did a very black and white theme throughout her entire project. So even all of her found images, she actually converted all of those to black and white. Obviously lettered it out, still practicing on the lettering and all of that. And then she did all of these drawn images. So these were her representation of the terms. Now, what I did give you guys a pass on was that if you did not have access to a printer and didn't want to do these, you did not have to do the found images. If you did and you wanted to, just know that the found images were not a requirement for your project this year because you just didn't have access to the classroom printer. The little drawn images, these were required. So this was the front side. Again, she did the back side. Okay? And now I want to point out a few things here. Some of you guys might be looking at this and going, how did she meet the rules? Okay? So, again, guys, I'm leaving this up to interpretation. Okay? These lines, now she did not do the bonus points on this, I do not believe. I can't remember how she justified it. I think she did. She justified it very strangely, but I let her slide because I like creativity. So if we look at this, some of you guys might go, how in the world did she do this and get this like shape floating in the middle of this image? And her thought process was she came down here, went across here, went all the way across, and came back up and out. She went over the same line to go out. And I let her slide on that because I think that's a good use. And then the same thing. She went down here, came across here, came up, came over, and came back down the same line. Okay? So, as long as you can escape to an edge, I'll let you slide. Same thing kind of applied for this, right? So she did one of these step things. She came across here, she stepped, came down to here, went back the other direction, stepped out. And then she literally started on this edge, went all the way across, went all the way across, went all the way across. Okay? And as you look at these, you can kind of see that she sort of did that same thing over and over, right? She came across here, and she came back down. And then she came up, She came over, she came back down. And guys, look, I'm not overly concerned about like some of the things. This is really just trying to show all of your terms and define them with the lines. Try to stay within the bounds. What I would have liked her to do is darken up the grid line a little bit so that I could identify the grid line a little bit better. But that was my only critique for this. What I want to say is that, well, let's go this route. What do you guys think of this? Like the back of hers and the even going as far as showing the front. What do you guys think of that? Just opinion. Meh? I always like to say meh.
I like what she did, but I feel like there isn't as much effect just because like we don't have her explaining it to us. Like I feel like it has to be a very specific explanation, and like you'd understand it better with a back and forth dialogue where you could like ask questions and have her directly explain.
Sure. It makes complete sense. I do want to say that she did put this in her portfolio as one of her pieces, and during her portfolio review at her Cornell interview, because they did a Skype Cornell interview, the lady from Cornell said she absolutely loved this project, that it was one of her favorite ones in her portfolio. Now, she had some really cool looking stuff, and if I can be completely honest with you guys, I think it looks good. I kind of like the black and white thing, right? It just, I think Danny says it serves its purpose, but very plain. I think the fact that it is this very monochromatic kind of just appearance, right? I think it looks good. I think the back, she pushed her luck a little bit with her justifications, but I like that she did it, and I was completely okay with it, guys, right? Like, this isn't going in my portfolio, it's going in yours. So she was very pleased with the way that this turned out. More importantly, like I said, the lady from Cornell really, really appreciated this. And what she appreciated was the little blurb that she wrote about this, because her I'll go back to that. The little blurb that she wrote about this in her portfolio, she did a really good job describing what the project was about, and what she had to do was basically justify these design terms using very very restrictive rules. And so what the Cornell professor had said was she was really impressed that somebody entering the program had that knowledge of understanding of design. So really kind of take your time on these things. Do a good job. Spend some time on it. Obviously, there is a deadline with everything. So do keep in mind that I'm going to try to push out of this project ASAP. We need to get rolling on the next project, which is a fairly large one. But at that point, I'm going to stop recording because I think that's enough reasoning.